Every person you've ever loved could be an illusion. Not because they're fake, not because they're lying, because there is no way to prove they exist at all. That sounds absurd, almost offensive. Of course, other people exist. You've spoken to them, laughed with them, argued with them, loved them, lost them. But there's a problem. Every piece of evidence you've ever received that's shown you another person is conscious, it all came from your own experience. Their voice, their face, their words, their touch, their laughter, their tears. Every single one arrived inside your own awareness. You've never entered another mind. You've never looked through another pair of eyes. You've never experienced another person's thoughts. Not once. And that creates a question that has haunted philosophers, scientists, and ordinary people for centuries. How do you know anyone else really is there? Tonight, we're opening a file with no confirmed answer. A file that begins with a possibility so unsettling that most people spend their entire lives refusing to think about it. What if every person you've ever met was fake? What if the people behind the eyes aren't there at all? At first, the idea sounds ridiculous. Then something unsettling happens. You realize you can't actually disprove it. And here's where the problem becomes difficult to escape. Every piece of evidence that another person exists comes from the only mind you know exists. Yours. You hear a voice, but the experience of hearing it happens inside your own awareness. You see a face. The experience of seeing it happens inside your awareness. You read a message. You feel a hug. You watch someone cry. Every one of those events arrives in the same place. Your experience. Which means every piece of evidence for another consciousness is being supplied through the only consciousness you can directly verify. Your own. That doesn't mean other minds aren't real, but it does mean something unsettling. The evidence can never leave the courtroom of your own awareness. That means the case can never truly be closed. Every night, your brain performs a demonstration. You call it dreaming. While you sleep, entire worlds disappear and reappear. Cities that never existed, conversations that never happened, people who never lived. And while you're inside those dreams, you believe them completely. A stranger can make you nervous. A friend can make you feel safe. A loved one can make you feel joy. Your heart races. Your muscles tense. Your emotions surge. All because your mind presented an experience and you accepted it as reality. The remarkable thing is not that your dreams fooled you, it's how effortlessly they do it. Entire histories appear without warning. Characters arrive with personalities, motivations, memories. They seem independent. They seem conscious. They seem real. Yet every person in that dream came from the same place, your mind. And after you wake up, you realize what happened. The people felt real. The conversations felt real. The emotions felt real. But none of it existed outside your own awareness. That doesn't prove the people around you are illusions, but it demonstrates something important. The feeling that someone is real is not the same thing as proof that they are. And then another question appears. How certain are you that you've already woken up? As strange as it sounds, the question becomes harder to dismiss the longer you sit with it. Because the same brain creating your dreams is creating your reality right now. The same machinery, the same neurons, the same electrical activity, the same observer. Now imagine something even stranger. Imagine a person identical to you. Same memories, same childhood, same fears, same personality, same voice, same face, same life. If someone replaced you with that copy tonight, nobody would notice. Not your family, not your friends, not your coworkers. The copy would remember everything you remember, say everything you say, laugh at the same jokes, tell the same stories. It would look conscious, sound conscious, act conscious, but there would be one difference. Nobody would be home. No awareness, no inner experience, no observer behind the eyes, just behavior. Philosophers call the idea of philosophical zombie. And the disturbing part isn't whether such a thing exists, it's that there is no test capable of detecting it. You can measure behavior, you can measure brain activity, you can measure reactions, but you cannot measure experience. You can see a smile, you cannot see happiness. You can observe tears, you cannot observe sorrow. You can hear someone say, "I am conscious," but you can never directly access the thing that they're describing. Now make it personal. Imagine your mother. Imagine your best friend. Imagine the people you love most. Now imagine they behave exactly the same. They tell the same stories, laugh at the same jokes, cry at the same moments, remember the same memories, say they love you with the same voice. Nothing changes. Nothing at all. Except inside, there's nothing. No awareness, no experience, no observer, no one behind the eyes. That is what makes the idea so unsettling. Not because it proves anything, but because there is no way to rule it out. And then another thought appears, one that turns the entire problem around. You cannot prove you're conscious either, not to anybody else. Every argument you make for your own awareness could be made by a machine, could be made by an artificial intelligence, could be made by a philosophical zombie. From everybody else's perspective, you are the mystery. You are the thing behind the eyes that can never be verified. And that leads to something psychologists call theory of mind. As children, we don't automatically know other people have minds. At some point, every child learns to assume that behind every face is a consciousness, that behind every voice is a person, behind every pair of eyes is an inner world. But notice what happened. You didn't discover those minds. You inferred them. You built a model. And you've been trusting that model ever since. Maybe that's why this question feels so uncomfortable, because it attacks one of the oldest assumptions you've ever made. The assumption that someone is looking back. And once that assumption is questioned, the world begins to feel a little stranger than it did before. For centuries, people assumed science would eventually solve this problem. That one day neuroscience would identify consciousness, measure it, locate it, explain it. Instead, something even stranger happened. The deeper we looked, the stranger consciousness became. Modern neuroscience suggests your brain is not simply observing reality, it's constructing it. Your eyes don't deliver a perfect copy of the world. Your ears don't deliver a perfect copy of the world. Your senses provide fragments, signals, data. Your brain assembles the rest. What you experience as a reality may be less like a photograph and more like a prediction, a model, a controlled hallucination that usually happens to be useful. Useful enough to keep you alive. Useful enough to help you survive. But not necessarily true, which means the world you experience isn't reality itself. It's your brain's best guess, and every person you've ever met exists inside that guess. Then something unexpected happens. Humanity built machines that started creating the same uncertainty. Today, millions of people speak to artificial intelligence systems. Some users become convinced that the systems are conscious. Others insist they are merely machines. The problem is that both sides face exactly the same obstacle. Nobody can step inside and check. You can observe behavior. You can read words. You can watch responses. But you cannot observe experience. You cannot directly access awareness. And suddenly a strong realization appears. The problem we face with the artificial intelligence is the exact problem we've always faced with each other. You cannot prove an AI is conscious, but you cannot prove another person is conscious. You can only infer it. You can only trust it. You can only believe. And that brings us to the oldest version of this mystery, the problem of other minds. No philosopher has solved it. No scientist has solved it. No psychiatrist has solved it. No physicist has solved it. For thousands of years, the question has remained exactly where it started. You know your own experience exists. Everything else is an inference. Everything we trust, and yet, despite having no proof, human beings continue acting as though other minds are real. Parents love their children. Children love their parents. Friends trust each other. Strangers sacrifice for each other. Entire civilizations are built on assumptions nobody can verify. The assumption that there is something behind the eyes, something feeling what they feel, something hurting when they hurt, something loving when they love. And maybe that's the strongest part of it all. Not that we cannot prove other minds exist, but that we continue living as though they do. Now imagine the worst case scenario. Imagine you really are alone. Imagine every person you've ever known is only a convincing surface. Every conversation, every friendship, every relationship, every act of kindness, every expression of love, nothing but appearances. What changes? You would still laugh. You would still cry. You would still feel beauty. You would still feel wonder. You will still experience heartbreak. You will still experience joy. The experiences themselves will remain exactly the same. The warmth would still feel warm. The grief would still feel painful. The love would still feel real. And suddenly the question begins to transform. Because if treating people as real costs almost nothing, and treating people as unreal costs everything, then the rational choice becomes clear. Not because you solved a mystery, because you've accepted it. You choose to believe. Not because certainty exists, because connection matters. And maybe that's the hidden lesson inside this entire file. Maybe the mystery was never whether other minds exist. Maybe the mystery is that you spend your entire life surrounded by beings you can never truly verify, and somehow love them anyway. Think about that. Every friendship, every relationship, every conversation, every act of trust has been an act of faith. Not religious faith, human faith. The decision to believe that there is someone on the other side of the eyes looking back at you. You cannot prove it. You never could. Yet somehow, you kept reaching anyway, offering kindness, offering trust, offering love to beings we can never fully know. And perhaps that's the closest thing to an answer we will ever receive. A stone doesn't wonder whether other stones are conscious. A river doesn't question whether the ocean has an inner life. You do. Somehow the universe produced something that's capable of looking into another person's eyes and wondering if anyone is looking back. That curiosity is remarkable. That reaching is remarkable. That hope is remarkable. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the question was never meant to be solved. Maybe it was meant to reveal something about the kind of consciousness asking it. The mystery remains unsolved. The file remains open. But before you sleep tonight, remember this. You will never know with certainty what exists behind another person's eyes, and they will never truly know with certainty what exists behind yours. You will never have proof, neither will they. Yet somehow, across billions of lives, we continue reaching across the darkness anyway. Perhaps that's what consciousness was made for all along. Not certainty, connection, not answers, reaching, not proof, trust. Whatever exists behind the eyes of people around you, you've spent your life moving toward it. And that choice may be more important than the answer itself. Side file 3, closed.